3 free YouTube channels on EVs and clean tech are funded by our fun-packed test drive-tastic events in Farnborough, London, the Southwest, the North, Melbourne and Sydney, and next up, Everything Electric Farnborough. And new for UK viewers, you can now buy a battery EV and much more at everythingelectric.store.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Everything Electric podcast, where today we're actually recording this at Everything Electric Vancouver. And I'm delighted to be joined on stage by Kristian Aquilina.
Thank you, Imogen.
Have I said your name correctly?
Yeah, that is close enough. It's Kristian Aquilina. I think you were spot on.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why I paused, because we recently recorded an episode on a converted electric 1952 mahogany Aquilina boat. But that's an Aquilina, not Aquilina. Anyway, I want to make sure I say the right thing. Okay, so let's get into it because we only have half an hour and there is so much ground that we need to cover. So, can you tell us who you are and what you do? And if you could give your dinner party response, that would be great.
Well, I am known for rambling on at dinner parties, but hey, here we go. My name's Kristian Aquilina. I'm the President and Managing Director of GM in Canada. I have the unbelievable privilege of representing 7,500 employees across our country and also 450 dealers also in every corner of Canada. So it's a wonderful privilege that I have.
It's also, it's a pretty cool job title, if we're honest. And I know that you've been with the organisation for a long time. There must have been a moment where you got your business card and thought, yeah, I'm quite proud of that.
Yeah, I have to pinch myself every day. It is a very cool job. And it's just because that coming together of those individuals with all their talents, manufacturing, engineering, the commercial side of the business, every day we come together and create value for our customers, and it's so rewarding where at the end of the day, those customers get to vote, and they're voting as number one at the moment. So it's something that we all as an entire team, as a GM family, are extraordinarily proud of, and yeah, I get to have that title, which is pretty cool too.
Yeah. And you've been with GM for a little while. I wonder if you could give us a very brief whistle-stop tour of your journey through this behemoth OEM.
I started my career at General Motors, as probably my accent gives away, in Australia. And back then, General Motors in Australia was known as Holden, and it was a full-scale manufacturer, engineer, and developer, designer of vehicles, primarily for the Australian market, but exported to the world. And so from day one, it really brought a global mindset to the way that you think about the automotive industry and the way that you think about your customer. And I've had the privilege of working for General Motors in various parts of the world, various parts of the organisation, and of Australia, New Zealand. I had the opportunity to represent Cadillac in its international markets, based in Dubai, before coming here to Canada. So that is a very shortened history of my time at General Motors.
Now, General Motors probably epitomises this whole mantra of, we're going to see more change in the next 10 years than ever happened before in the automotive industry. And I believe GM was founded in 1908, but I guess since probably 2009, it has undergone profound change. And I wonder if you could just give us just a couple of the headline stats that I've heard a couple of times this weekend around how GM's EV portfolio is performing here in Canada.
Well, it's so from GM's perspective, like we are, as you said, in 1908, we were involved in leading this amazing transformation in personal mobility from the horse and cart to the horseless carriage, and that was never more successful than it was here in Canada, where the founder of a carriage maker joined forces with General Motors, and thereby this beautiful thing GM Canada started. Fast forward to here we are in 2025, and we are navigating yet another fantastic transformation in personal mobility, which is all, at its very heart, is offering convenience and value to our customers. That's what's really driving this transition more than anything. And this technology is not limited to the electrification, although that's what we're talking about here, but it's also the coming together and convergence of other things, such as the connectivity of vehicles, the fact that they're more software defined than they've ever been before, and through that customizable for our customers. The fact that in many ways the cars will increasingly be able to drive themselves. Today, you can drive one of our electric vehicles or gas-powered vehicles with Super Cruise and be hands-off for miles and miles on Canadian roads. And this is all coming together and offering customers the choice in a competitive environment to be the number one seller of EVs in this country, number one seller of luxury EVs under our Cadillac brand. That's something that, in a very short period of time, like you suggested, has happened at just an electrifying pace.
I had the privilege of going in an optic earlier on this week.
Cool.
I really liked it. And I'm going to mention this. You'll be like, oh, for God's sake, of all the different things that in that car that you could have pointed out, why was it this? I just flipping love that in actually the whole Cadillac lineup, that you can adjust the seats on the door rather than sort of blindly trying to find how you control the seats.
Right.
I just think that is a neat feature.
That's a little Cadillac signature feature, be able to change the settings and set your massage settings just there on the door within plain sight. And anyone who gets in an optic needs to try our audio system. It is mind-blowing. I mean, we can talk about how a car drives and gets from A to B all you like, but its audio system is super cool with Dolby Surround, and it is just yet another experience for luxury customers.
Can I ask what you drive?
Yeah, we've gone from being a 2 gas-powered vehicle family to a 2 EV family. So we have a Cadillac Lyric, so the bigger version of the optic that you just turned on. It's a 5-seater SUV. And we're also got a GMC Sierra EV truck, which is nearing like 800 kilometres of range. So that is just the ideal recreational / work vehicle for us, because I can put my kayak right through the back of the vehicle. The midgate drops down, so a full 2-man kayak can get into that, plus my bicycles, and we're set for Canadian summers.
I could probably move house at the same time. It is an absolutely behemoth contraption, but extremely cool.
Fantastic car.
Now, one of the things that strikes me about GM in Canada is that Canada is huge. And not only is it huge, but it has these sort of hotspots in different cities. And so I feel like your job must be extremely difficult in that you're having to have almost a very localized approach in how you speak to customers. And I know that Vancouver in particular is a bit of an anomaly when compared to the rest of Canada. How on earth do you go about that?
Yeah, I mean, we're blessed with a team who can really think locally. We have representation right across the country who give us feedback into the way that we should be going into market. And of course, the biggest strength is a dealer network that is in every corner of the country, very sensitive to the needs of their customers in each part of the country, and can help us with understanding where product should be allocated and our approach to how we present our vehicles and our brands to the customers in their communities. You're right in pointing out that observation is actually quite incisive. You've got a patchwork of different policy approaches, for example, that drive the market in very different ways across our country. As you say, Vancouver has been benefiting from EV incentives, which were different to, say, Alberta or Calgary, right across the way. And so we adapt our approach accordingly and make sure that we've got our vehicles positioned to meet the market in each of those circumstances.
One of the huge challenges about, and this has been a theme really that's emerged during this whole weekend, is that in order to develop clean energy technologies and electric vehicles, and indeed any sort of OEM, you need to have that commitment to a long-term future, not least because the product cycle dictates that.
Right.
But the political environment is changing on a much more frequent basis, and I think this epitomizes that. So I printed my notes on Thursday evening, which was a mistake, because my question on...
Changed so much.
Well, quite. So my question on Thursday evening was, ZEV mandates in this region are ambitious, 100% of sales by 2035. But sales dipped after incentives ended earlier this year, etc., etc., etc. It goes on. Friday morning, it was announced that the ZEV mandate is being temporarily scrapped, whatever that means.
Yep.
And from your perspective, what is the best approach? And is it just sufficient to have excellent vehicles and for that to be enough to drive this transition to electric vehicles?
Well, I think, firstly, I'm very much a believer that we should be absolutely building fantastic, convenient vehicles that look good, are fun to drive, have all the technology. But really, it's really a strategy based on following the customer and being dictated by the customer, their willingness to pay, their desires and choice for convenience that really should be driving the market and the transition. We at General Motors are very much pro-EV. We've released 13 EVs in the last 18 months. There's more to come. To offer that choice, there's an EV in our portfolio for every Canadian wallet, and we are hungry to beat our competition in trying to meet the market better than they can. And that is what's driving our growth, our position, our ranking in the marketplace. At the same time, it's not going to be practical in every use case in a country as vast as Canada to dictate a rate of transition or an EV adoption. So we continue to invest in making our gas-powered vehicles incredibly efficient, more efficient on every release, so that choice exists for customers. And if a certain technology, whether it be EVs, gas-powered vehicles, or hybrids in between, are going to compel a customer to come over and transition from whatever they're used to, they need to be good enough to deserve that. And we're very invested in trying to make compelling vehicles to do just that. We don't want to miss out on the technology change. Once technology that is awesome like EVs is out there, it's difficult to contain it. Customers will lead it, and we want to be at the forefront of supplying them.
Gosh, there's so many different ways I could take this question, because I know that our audience, many of the people listening, are real diehard pro-EV fans, to the extent where anything that's got hybrid in the title, we're like, oh, I don't know how we feel about those. And yet we have to be realistic about the fact that this is going to be a journey, and people have to go on that journey in their own time and the way that feels most appropriate for them. And so it's a curious thing that you said there, because on the one hand, in having the full portfolio, both internal combustion engine vehicles and electric vehicles, it allows people who are customers to make that transition. Maybe they currently have a GM product that has a petrol engine, but maybe their next one will be an electric vehicle. But at the same time, many of your EV customers, I believe, are new to the brand.
That's right.
So do you see very different, customer profiles between your combustion engine side of the business and electric vehicle side of the business?
It's an interesting question. About 60% of our EV customers are new to GM. First time they've walked into a GM dealership and purchased a GM vehicle. And by goodness, we want to make sure that they come back again. So we'll work very hard for that business. The profile so far has been very much a tech-forward, early adopter style, transitioning to that early majority type of customer. But the same fundamentals exist almost regardless of propulsion system. People demand and should receive great value for money, great convenience with the technology that they're considering to purchase. They They are certainly expecting and will receive from a GM dealer great service, and those fundamentals do not change. It's like almost technology agnostic, but and of course the reliability. I did forget to say that reliability and the backup of, in our case, 450 dealers across the country. These are all things that that are consistent regardless. And yeah, there is slightly different profile, but hey, we see EV customers across all age groups. I don't know if you can paint an average EV buyer, do a pen picture of them, but we're very much driven by meeting those fundamentals and making sure that an EV delivers on those expectations.
So coming back to ZEV mandate and incentives, and ZEV mandate was there, now it's not there. Incentives were there, they're now not there. It's really difficult because it totally changes the game from a consumer perspective of the perceived urgency and also the accessibility of these vehicles, because incentives obviously help make them more affordable. If we could ring up Mark Carney and leave him a little voice note, what would you say?
Yeah, so incentives, purchase incentives like that, serve a purpose in accelerating what would otherwise naturally happen at a slower pace. To answer your question directly, I'm talking to an economist when I'm calling Mark Carney, and I would suggest this. I would suggest that whilst there's purchase incentives as a one-off hit does play a role, I think a higher priority for our resources, as they're always constrained, would to be invest in the things that are going to be generational, long-lasting, and have a much broader impact on EV adoption in our country. And that's making charging infrastructure far more ubiquitous across Canada. That, I think, is higher priority for me, and that should be a focus. If you actually look at our customer data, when we ask customers who are considering an EV or may not be considering an EV, what are the main barriers? They say range, they say affordability, and they might say just the technology is not something I'm familiar with. Well, the range thing, when we produce a vehicle that can travel 800 kilometres on a single charge, that's not range anxiety, that's charger anxiety. And that is an actual thing here in Canada, not necessarily maybe in Vancouver, but you go beyond Vancouver into the northern part of our province here, or anywhere in Canada, and you're just not sure whether there'll be a charger there, and if it's there, whether it will be working. Now, 800 kilometres, you can get to Kelowna and probably halfway back, probably more than that, and you don't have to worry too much about it. But for a lot of folks, that's still going to be on their mind as an uncertainty around whether they make that transition. So you can take that issue right out of the equation by investing in that infrastructure. It's nation-building type of infrastructure, and I think it deserves higher priority.
And it is the age-old chicken and egg question of our electric era, I think. And just to pick up on the 800 kilometres, and could that get you from Vancouver up to Kelowna? For anyone who also watches our episodes, our electric boat episode that I actually mentioned at the start was in Kelowna.
Oh.
And what's brilliant about that journey from here to Kelowna is that you can stop in a place called Hope, which was where actually a lot of the Rambo films were filmed. But it also has, so it's in the middle of nowhere, but it has fantastic charging infrastructure. So that journey becomes very easy, and you can stop for really excellent sandwiches as well. I'm just going to do a little time check. Okay. We also will come to a few questions. So if you do have one, make sure to store it up. Oh, in a few moments' time, though. So I've clocked you, and you can sit down for a little bit.
I think you're number one first when it does. First cab off the rank.
So the other question I have is that we've obviously mentioned that the changing ZEV mandate here in Canada, which is the most recent news. But there's also a number of other political tensions that make life quite challenging, I would say. And recently, GM announced that you're continuing to import battery cells from CATL, despite obviously those trade tensions that may exist. And of course, GM has an incredibly global footprint. Like, there's a design studio in the UK that is doing all sorts of secret, wonderful things.
True.
Yeah, there's like a location everywhere. And so you've got this dichotomy of, trying to bring more of GM's footprint within the US, but also having to square that with the fact that it is a global organization with global partnerships.
Right.
That must make your life very hard. How can you operate in those particular environments?
Well, the difficulty that comes with any geopolitical or a phase of geopolitical tensions that are shifting and always, they're always moving, and your investments are much longer term and durable than the speed at which those tensions can shift. But just to point out there, I mean, it's when we like to build vehicles close to where we sell them. We like to source materials now, particularly. We've learned a lot in the last 5-6 years. We like to source materials closer to where we make the vehicles, near shore, and reduce risks. Just generally, do that in an economic way for our customers. Yes, you're right that we are temporarily utilising CATL LFP cells to bridge a gap to when we can actually get our own battery cell or our joint venture battery cell production up and running in the United States, and so it's really a stopgap solution. And really that's just in response to managing. Of course, we're managing through all of the geopolitical stuff, but really at the heart of it is we're responding to the customer. Customer said, we love your EVs, we'd like potentially a lower cost version. Maybe we're not going to prioritise range so much. So for the use case that a lot of those customers are showing up for, inner urban kind of transport can go several days without need for a charge, but don't want to necessarily spend a lot of money on the capital outlay for the vehicle. How can we respond to that? Yeah, we're going to move quickly to bring an LFP chemistry battery in, the highest cost part of the vehicle, of course, and make that available as quickly as we can. Since then, changes in the geopolitical situation have shifted, but we're able to continue to along that strategy with an eye on what we'll ultimately do to provide that same affordability with a near-shored solution. And that's how we're just navigating that particular use case.
And of course, here in Canada, it is blessed with a huge number of critical raw materials.
Yes.
How is GM thinking about leveraging what is on offer here and those supply chains?
Yeah, so for we're looking at a variety of chemistries at the moment. Some of those really lend themselves nicely to what Canada has to offer, such as its immense nickel resources. We now high nickel chemistry batteries, and yeah, so we're taking that opportunity, sourcing some of those materials, but also doing some of the added value processing of those materials here in Canada. We're building a facility with our joint venture partner at the moment in Quebec, which would take nickel and some of the other materials inputs, and will make the CAM material, the cathode side of the battery for a lithium-ion battery, which we will then export to our battery cell plants in other parts of the continent to turn that into a cell and then eventually a battery pack wherever we make the battery pack. So that's just one example, and we have other agreements. Nearshoring onto the continent provides opportunities for Canada. We have a arrangement with another provider of naturally forming graphite to help on the anode side, and that's going to be another opportunity to pursue. So we're being opportunistic about where those chances lie for Canada to play a role in our entire battery supply chain.
I will come to the question. I haven't forgotten it. Just want to reassure you. So GM has recently formed a partnership with Hyundai in pursuit of those lower cost EVs, I believe. And also here in Canada, there aren't Chinese EVs. And so I know those two statements sort of sound unrelated, but I suppose the question is, at the moment you have that benefit of not having to compete with Chinese EVs, but very quickly there is still that need to have greater affordability in the EV sector. And how much of that partnership with Hyundai is in anticipation of competing more substantially with Chinese EVs?
Yeah, it's certainly a part of the puzzle. It's not the only lever that we're pulling here to just rapidly increase our competitiveness and translate some of the benefit of that to it for our customers. So, for example, the deal with Hyundai, yes, it allows us to co-develop some vehicles together, but really the opportunity for between us, I think we produce and sell across the globe something like 10 million vehicles. That's enormous scale to bring to our battery supply chains, wherever we can, or our supply chains, our development costs, wherever we can look for complementary opportunities to collaborate. It only benefits those folks who are considering purchasing our vehicles and owning our vehicles. So that's just one of the responses. We're confident with with GM's capability in design, our brands and what they promise, the service that our dealerships around the country, around both countries offer, that we're preparing ourselves to face any competitor, no matter where they come from. So that's the work that's going on. I think there's plenty of opportunity to improve our readiness.
So the podcast that's going out before yours is with RJ Scaringe, who's CEO of Rivian. And I asked him this question as well. If you had to go and apply for a job at another OEM, and let's say it's not like a super duper fancy title like you currently have.
Oh, no.
And this can be an OEM past or present, and it can't be GM. Where would you apply?
Oh.
For reference, RJ said that he'd go and be a track engineer at Porsche, or like a test driver at Porsche.
Porsche immediately came to my mind too, because I just remember the posters that I had when I was growing up as a kid were Porsches and Holden's, General Motors in Australia. They were the two sort of brands that I really admired. Geez, that's a tough question because we consider Porsche as a competitor nowadays. We've got this wonderful Corvette. It's a mid-engine thing. It goes around a track really quick, and I don't know if there's anyone out there that's not a competitor. I'm actually. I might come back to you on that question. That's a really tough one.
It is a really tough question, and it's an unfair one that I didn't prepare you for.
Yeah, that's okay. I don't want anyone, my employers especially, getting any intention on thinking else. That was the best response for them, actually.
Well, everyone's a competitor, and there was an extremely diplomatic answer as well. The gentleman who is here, let's go to your question, and then we'll come over there.
Hi. I think it's fair to say that in Canada we have a habit of taking our natural resources and in some cases selling them to other countries to manufacture things and then bringing them back for us to buy. And there hasn't been the T word mentioned much here in the last 2 days. With the tariffs, is that going to make it more difficult? I believe the Bright Drop is the only electric vehicle that GM makes that's manufactured here in Canada, or assembled at least?
Yeah, as a finished vehicle, correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that going to mean that we might lose them, or we would lose future General Motors manufacturing because of that, because of the tariff situation? Or is there something in GM's long term where that very important Southern Ontario niche of putting cars together is on their agenda? Yeah,
it's this trade dynamic that that has emerged in the last, I guess, few months, half a year, I suppose, really does prompt us to take really a step back and make sure that, okay, when it comes to Canada's role in the automotive industry, or in GM, Canada's role within the GM manufacturing footprint, how should we best respond to the situation? The situation is pretty unclear. It is riddled with ambiguity. But the best thing you can do in times of ambiguity and uncertainty is invest in your ability to react, to be agile, to be able to adapt to the situation. And that's where we've invested a hell of a lot of time, resources, thinking about. We've been spending a lot of time with our people, making sure that we're ready to be resilient, but also agile through that time. We're continuing to invest here in Canada. We're very excited about the prospects and our role in the automotive industry within the General Motors manufacturing footprint, but also beyond manufacturing. We're investing in tech talent. We have 1,200 to 1,300 software engineers and hardware engineers. They're also in Ontario, coming from the best of Canadian universities and the talent from around the world. And these are the people that are working on those very things that I was describing before, that trend around connectivity of the vehicles, the electrification of them, the software basis of the vehicles, as well as their autonomous capability with Super Cruise. We've got that happening here in Canada. So in summary, we've spent a bit of time taking the opportunity to work out what we need to do to be agile to whatever happens and show durability through times of ambiguity. And I think the team's responded amazingly to that challenge.
Thank you so much for your question. Also, I guess related to that, it's hard, right? And there must be days where you're like, oh, for goodness sake, this is just quite annoying. And more than quite annoying, worrying at times as well. So if the power of this event, the power of this podcast could grant you a wish, so one thing that you'd be like, oh, do you know what, that would make life really a lot easier over the next 12 to 18 months, what would you ask for?
Something that's all in the power of your hands. I think you all live in Vancouver, BC. We would really like to see we see opportunity to spread the word around what General Motors has to offer, particularly in the space that you're here at an EV show because you're interested in the technology. And I think we want to really impress you with what we've got and what we've developed as General Motors. And for too long, we feel like, we might have been late to the party, but geez, when we turn up to the party, we wanted to come with with the best of what we have to offer. And I think, if anything, I could wish from the team, that the group that is here today is, I think, helping us with the awareness of what General Motors has brought to the table here in the British Columbia market would be an enormous assistance.
Well, you heard it here. And also, downstairs, you can actually test drive a load of the GM lineup. And
there you go.
As I said, I really liked the optic. It was pretty good. We will take 2 questions, and then we'll have to wrap up. So we'll go here and then there.
Thank you very much. And Kristian, I'm here to give a bit of a General Motors ad and to shift the conversation a little bit about what electric vehicles are that ICE vehicles are not. And GM is a very smart company, and I think a lot of people don't know there's a part of it called GM Energy. And people maybe don't know as well that one of the GM vehicles can power your home for over 20 days. So I'm an oddball that thinks of electric vehicles as batteries that happen to have wheels. And, going 800 kilometers, wonderful, but that's a unique thing. And I'm finishing now, wonderful to have a massage feature, but to be able to power your home for a few days when and if there's an outage, I think would be more. And I wanted to ask you,
really about the work that GM's doing there, or how that will come to play with utilities? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think it's such an exciting opportunity that is altruistic beyond the purchase and ownership of a vehicle for mobility, is this capability of having nodes that can potentially come together and respond to an emergency situation, or indeed allow customers to access the most efficiently priced power for their own lives, and buy off-peak power and store it and then and use it at another time. So the GM Energy business unit is still a growing business for us. We've prioritized our efforts in the US so we can learn from the utilities that we're working with. We can learn around those utilities who are predisposed to leveraging that opportunity, who identify some, what would you call it? There's some benefit for them as well, because it can modify their investment planning, save some money, but also prepare them for the worst of times as well. Those utilities are teaching us a lot about how we might approach the expansion of that business in other markets like Canada. To the extent that we have an open-mindedness to it from Canadian-based utilities, there's going to be a time where we want to start that conversation, because, as you say, all those kilowatt hours bound up in a vehicle has so much, and those electrons has so much usefulness beyond the mobility piece. And so I look forward to exploring that as that business develops a bit further. Thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah, thank you for your question. And I have to say I agree, because our audience love both clean energy and electric vehicles, and any opportunity for vehicle-to-grid type situations. That is the sweet spot of our audience, and we want to hear about it even more. Last question over there.
Okay, so I was down in Nova Scotia, and I was coming here, and I thought, I'll just drive. So I did. And
You drove from Nova Scotia?
Yes, in my EV. Took a while.
What?
Yeah.
That doesn't deserve a round of applause.
Thank you. It was kind of inadvertent. Like, I had to go back to Montreal, and so I did. And then I thought, well, why don't I just keep going? So I did.
You just took a wrong turn somewhere?
I made a wrong turn. I ended up in Alberta. What can I say? And then I came here. So,
Good on
but
you.
I wanted to just second your suggestion to Mark Carney. So what I learned crossing the country is we do not have a coherent national charging network. We have chargers, but other than Tesla, we do not have a network that's designed as a network to facilitate east to west, west to east travel. And especially from Sault Ste. Marie to Winnipeg. So if you're looking for a spot to mention where that charging infrastructure should go, that's my vote.
Okay.
So I totally second your opinion that what's missing is charging infrastructure. The other thing I would say is I met a lot of GM EV drivers along the way. They love their cars, and they're very brand loyal. They love the company. So that's, and whether they were driving a Bolt or something new, GM drivers that I met, and at chargers, people talk, right? And nobody said anything bad about their GM EVs. So I'm just going to say that. And then the third thing I'd like to say is, I'm from Quebec. It gets cold. I want that heat the house feature on my next EV. I thank you.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
before you go,
Yes?
could you just, for our international listeners, can you just tell us roughly how many miles or kilometers was that drive?
Just the one leg, 6,000 kilometers. But I actually had to get there first. So I've actually driven 9,000 kilometers, give or take.
Well, I think you're right for a new car.
This can be, but it wasn't, I'm retired. I had time, right? I just doodled along, right? So I thank you.
I must say I've shared some of your experience, because my family, my son and I, we did a road trip from Toronto to Cape Breton Island on your
Yes,
in your
so
beautiful,
done that,
beautiful
yeah.
province there.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right around the patchwork that exists of charging infrastructure. Some provinces themselves have invested deeply, and it's just easy. And it's
Quebec.
like the whole idea is like not an adventure; it's just transport. But then it becomes an adventure. But I think it's fledgling, and it'll. I think with the right leadership there and the right policy environment, it'll encourage investment to support what we've already got.
When you're whispering in Mr. Carney's ear, please ask him to start in Chéticamp, which is at the north end of Cape Breton Island, and especially not to miss the bit in Northern Ontario, because that is the weakest point in the national network. Thank you.
Thank you. And also, thank you for doing the extensive market research there as well. We have gone way over time. So thank you so much, Kristian. This has been an extremely enjoyable conversation. Thank you to everyone here in the room. It has been absolutely glorious having you here. And to those listening along at home or in the car on the podcast, as ever, please do like and subscribe. And if you have been, thank you for listening and watching.